Hello and welcome to Media Snack, live from New York.
Live from London.
Right, we've got a special episode today, which is a good one because actually David and I are not going to talk very much. You might enjoy this one. So what are we doing today, mate?
So for over a decade, Tom, you and I have been talking about the power of media, the influence that media has in driving business outcomes. For the last 5 years, remarkably, we've been preaching that message on kind of Media Snack, all right? And there are very few people that perhaps we've referenced more on Media Snack, perhaps with the possible exception of Mark Pritchard, than Sir Martin Sorrell. And you know, we've come across Sir Martin when we manage lots of global media reviews, but with regards to an influential character within our industry, there is probably nobody that is better known. So yes, super excited about today.
Good. And it continues somewhat, I mean, along a theme, the Media for Growth series, which if you've been following, most of this year, we've been talking about media as a lever for growth and trying to kind of encourage that narrative. So Martin, obviously somebody who knows a lot about generating growth, and we're going to talk specifically about S4 Capital, the company that he's spent the last couple of years building. Recently valued just over $1 billion, so congratulations for that. And this week, actually, Matthew Walker, so analyst research called Beyond the Pandemic, published by Matthew Walker at Credit Suisse. It's a bit like an end of year book because they were voted S4 Capital as the most likely to succeed, which I think is a nice credit. And what they said was that the respondents that saw S4 Capital as the agency most likely to experience long-term financial success, which is quite an accolade. So we'll dig into that. So let's welcome Sir Martin Sorrell, and also joined by Scott Spirit, who leads business development for S4 Capital. Scott is based in Singapore. When we come to talk about new business and pitches, I think we'll turn to Scott as well. So welcome.
Good to be here. One correction: the result of your promotion, we're worth $2 billion as of tonight.
Oh, really? Congratulations! Brilliant.
Yeah, almost $2 billion. So we're moving up quickly.
Since we announced,
we're catching up the old fogies quite quickly.
Okay, good for you. Excellent. Well, listen, congratulations so much on that. As I've said, we want to just talk about the company.
Yeah.
You know, you're very often talking about the market or the economy, and good at talking about the holding companies. And I think the question you probably get asked more than anything else is the agency of the future. But we want to focus on the company that you're building,
right?
And the concept and the people and the culture, and kind of how you're going to grow that. And let's just see if we can lift the veil a little bit behind the thinking that's led to this $2 billion success. So I'm going to pass over to my learned friend David Inder to start that interrogation.
I'm going to start the question, Sir Martin. Welcome to the show, by the way. We're delighted to have you.
Good to be with you.
To have you with us. So I want to just tease out a little bit about the concept for S4 Capital. What was the blueprint? I mean, I think you're about 2 now, aren't you? You've been operational for about 2 years. And what was the
21? Well, we started in. I left WPP. We said I wasn't going to mention WPP, but I mentioned it already. April the 14th, I resigned, and then I left on May the 14th. I tidied everything up in a month. So and during that month, I was thinking about the WPP portfolio, and I looked at it, $20 billion worth then. And there were 3 big growth areas. And I was really focused on growth because Sarch is where I'd been before. WPP had been about globalization. And in the case of WPP, the beginnings of technology. In the late 90s, we started to focus on the web and the internet. But I really wanted to focus this time on growth, because if you look at market value, which is really what, at the end of the day, long-term market value is what we're all interested in. It's being driven by growth, and it's not just the last few weeks or the last few days, but you go back 7 or 8 years, healthcare and tech have been driving the markets. That's where all the growth's come. In fact, if you deflate that out, you take that out, you don't get very much growth elsewhere. So really, S4 is about growth. So I looked at the portfolio, and there were 3 areas. You know this from your consulting activities. So the first area was first-party data. Mm-hmm. The second area was digital advertising content. And the third area was data and analytics and programmatic. Now, you referenced Mark Pritchard. I would say it's an interesting observation. Procter have grasped this in spades. I think one of the reasons why Procter is so successful, had such a strong Q1, and my bet would be they would have a strong Q2 despite COVID, is because Mark has embraced a new model. I call it the Netflix model, but he's adapted it to P&G with first-party data, 1.2 billion consumers, profiles, producing content on a 24/7, always-on basis, sometimes in-house, sometimes out-house, sometimes embedded, and then finally utilizing data and analytics, particularly with the nixing of third-party cookies and programmatic. So that was the origination. But our focus, and Scott is our Chief Growth Officer, and our focus is on growth. We go where the growth is. Having struggled with WPP for 33 years and Saatchi's for 9 years, I came to the conclusion it was much easier to push on an open door. It took me 42 years to figure that out, but push on an open door. So go where the growth is, and that's where we are. Now, last year we grew in our first full year 40 to 45%, depending on what metric you looked at, top line and bottom line. This year we went into the COVID year saying we're going to double the size of the company organically. Forget about deals over 3 years, which means an implied growth rate of about 24% per annum. We went in with a budget this year pre-COVID of 30%. And in the first 5 months, we're up 10 to 15%. So despite COVID, and you know that the holdcos are going to be down 15 or 20%, 10 or 15%. So the delta is huge between what a purely digital, we have 4 principles, purely digital, that holy trinity of data and content and programmatic and data analytics, faster, better, cheaper being our go-to-market mantra. And last but not least, a unitary structure. No more earnouts, no more fragmentation, no more investments. One company with everybody working together. So that, in essence, is what you call the back of the envelope. It was more than back of the envelope. It wasn't on a napkin, but it was really based on growth. This is about top line growth and with profitability, with avoiding disintermediation. And we're on a mission. And the mission is to develop a tech-led, new age, new era advertising and marketing service model and disrupt the old. I mean, part of our mission is to disrupt the old, to take down the old.
I just want to play back just the final principle that you shared with us there, Martin. And the structure that you have as an organization. You made 2 very high-profile acquisitions, very early on. Mergers. Why was that so important? Why was the fact that there was no earnout? Why was that such an important kind of policy and principle for you?
Earnouts create hopeless fragmentation. I mean, you're seeing it again. I mean, everybody, they're shooting themselves in the foot. I mean, giving equity. Or a line, or even getting people to buy equity in an individual unit makes no sense, because all you do is fragment the thing. And you consult on pitches and new business. What you tell me if I'm wrong? Clients want the best people working on their business.
Yeah.
They want simplicity. Absolutely.
Well, they want simplicity, but they also want everybody working together to a common good. They don't want people focused on one aspect of the operation. Now, since when we started in June, really, of 2018 with Media Monks, which is our content practice, and in December of 18, Mighty Hive, which is our data and analytics and programmatic practice, and since then, we've added 11 companies, 6 on the content side with Media Monks, 5 on the data and analytics and programmatic side with Mighty Hive. We have effectively 13 companies that we brought together. We brought them together as 2 main brands: Media Monks content, and Mighty Hive on data analytics and programmatic. And we're now fusing those two into one. And unitary structure, you know, all the holding companies are trying to move actually to one firm. I mean, they're doing it at varying speeds and with varying results. And I don't think they'll get there, you know, because Scott and I wrestled with it at WPP for a number of years, but they're becoming more and more vertical. They're not, I know it's a banned word in some quarters, horizontality, and it was a bad word because it was an ugly word, but at least people remembered it. And what it was trying to say was work together. So we have 2,600 people, and I want to make sure that every one of those 2,600 knows what the other 2,599 are thinking. And no, that's the key. So no fragmenting earnouts, no 5-year earnouts or 3-year earnouts. Let's get on with it and integrate the firm. And it's interesting, the firms that we just brought in during COVID, they get at 24 hours, it's Mighty Hive Argentina. Lens 10, 24 hours, it's Mighty Hive Australia. The integration starts from the time that we sign the LOIs, not as we did at WPP, which is to wait until the SPA and the DD, the due diligence is done. We get on with it immediately. There's the thirst. It's interesting. There's a big thirst to get on with it. So we have something coming up in July around one of the big platforms, and we're already, we're midway through due diligence. I'm sure it will happen. And we're working together very closely, even before, forget about the ink being dry on the contract, before we've raised the pen to sign it. And I think that indicates the extent to which we're starting to get people to think about one firm and trying to leverage all the benefits in the firm and knowledge in the firm to the benefit of clients. Yeah, that's what we're doing. So we integration.
I knew we shouldn't have given you all the questions in advance because you just basically just answered them in one moment. But just on that, let's just unpack that a little bit, because that's the fascinating thing. I think, as you know, we were saying to you before the show, you know, a lot of the questions that you get asked typically are looking at the industry, looking at the economy. And it's really interesting to lift the veil a little bit, because you're building a model which is different to what we're used to as an industry. So,
wait. It's the same. You know, I've always said that the best professional service firms, I'm probably going to offend a lot of people, are McKinsey and Goldman Sachs. So in answer, really, it is not new.
Well, new for our industry, perhaps, but and I think it's just interesting for people that are in the marketing services industry just to understand how these deals are done. So just talk us through that. I mean, you said it wasn't a back of an envelope, but you had a kind of blueprint in mind, the key principles underpinning that, with an ambition to try to create this parity and the singularity of brand and the consistency and all that stuff. So just talk us through a hypothetical scenario. You identify a firm. Now, these are all founder-owner businesses as well. Yes. So you know, as founder-owner businesses, that's not an easy thing to do. You're not dealing with a management team necessarily, perhaps, but how do you? What's your secret sauce, perhaps, if you can give it away?
The first question or the first statement of every discussion is if you, and this was with Wesley Tahar and Victor Knapp, and with Pete Kim and Chris Martin in the case of Media Monks and Mighty Hive, if you want to sell your business, we're not interested. Go and talk to Accenture or Omnicom or whoever it happens to be. We're just not. If you want to buy in to that two-part philosophy, one, tech-led, new age, new era advertising and marketing service model, and you have missionary zeal to disrupt the old. I mean, there's you know, how can I put this? Media Monks often gets dismissed by those who are starting to get more and more concerned and frightened as being a rinky-dink production company. It isn't. Big mistake if you think they are. You know, I've been in the business for 42 years, more years than I care to admit, 44 years, 45 years. And I've never seen, or rarely seen, at Saatchi's or WPP as good a group as we have. You know, our top 8 people meet every day in our coronavirus crisis group, and as good as I've ever seen. There may have been people equally as good, but nobody better. And this is a very good team of people who share a mission: build a new firm and disrupt the old. Mighty Hyde was dismissed by many of the media agencies as let's say, a rinky-dink, small, transparency was their key, you know, open book, and dismissed. And they're out to prove something. You know, we're out.
What was that? What was the, you know, give me an example of that first contact. As you said, when you, like, that's interesting. If you're for sale, we're not interested, but if you want to be a part of something. So that means just from the get-go, you must have had a very, very clear and compelling vision. And you're obviously you're a compelling leader for them to want to work with. But what is the,
you know, with Wes and Pete, I remember it was in my in my apartment in New York. We had a meeting in the room, and we sat down, and you know, I'd had a chat with Victor before, and Victor, it was the first time I met Wes, and we sat down, and I said exactly what I just said to you. It was the very first thing out of my mouth. When I met Pete and Kim, Pete, Kim, and Chris, again, it was a process. Same thing. If you want to sell, we're not going to offer you the highest price. I think Pete, Kim, and Chris had 16 offers. We were number 4 in terms of value as assessed. What we can promise you is, from a qualitative point of view, this is going to be a home where entrepreneurs can flourish. You're going to capitalize half, because every entrepreneur who started with nothing is always worried about ending up with nothing again. So there's no harm in selling half, getting cash for half, but hold the other half. You know, I think there's another fundamental thing here. I think, you know, I did a webinar with the so-called independent agencies. And you can define independent as outside the 6 holding companies, or you can define it, I think, in a much better way, which could include the holding companies, actually, is if you've unified management and control. When you separate management and control, when management does not have skin in the game, in my view, the problems start. And it's not just my view, it's Warren Buffett, it's Jorge Lehman. You know, Jorge Lehman believes, the founder of 3G, or one of them, believes there is no such thing as corporate governance. To paraphrase him, the way you get corporate governance is by management owning a significant interest in the company. Where the problems start is when you separate the two. And people think it's just a job. This is not just a job. This is what, you know, this is Bill Shankly. Football's not a matter of life and death.
You've got David there.
It's about, you know, everybody in our industry talks about passion and, you know, devotion and commitment. It's about that. And that's the key thing. And if there are people who want to say, I mean, we have other criteria. We want top line growth. We want good margins, and we don't want the risk of disintermediation, of disruption. We want to try and minimize it. So we're very focused. We know exactly what we want, and we can, I think, sniff out those people who are looking for a quick kill or want to bugger off.
Yeah.
People that are in it for the long term, and that's key. That's absolutely key. And you know, often people say to us, well, where do you think S4 will be in 5 years' time? And the answer is, I don't know, other than we have brand awareness, we have brand trial, we have conversion at scale in 2 big cases at the moment, 2 tech companies. And I'm fairly confident that within very short order, we will have what we call whoppers, that is more than 5% of our revenues, which are running at over $400 million a year, well over 5% of our revenues. We'll have a number of other clients where we do that too, and not just tech clients, but in other verticals or other categories too. So the key is having a vision, a strategy, and then providing an incentive base that reinforces that strategy, which means commitment, that you have something at risk.
Yeah.
When you get up in the morning, you know, your heart will be in your mouth if you have, you know, something at risk.
Yeah.
If it's a job and you just do it to fill in the hours between 9 and 5, you know, you become a journeyman.
Yeah.
That's not interested in that. We're interested in people who are committed to that twofold objective.
So if I wanted to kind of pick up, it's really interesting, and thank you for sharing that. You know, we understand a little bit about the structure of the company and how you put that together. The other thing I think is interesting about it is because you're building these very close, it feels very personal relationships with these founders, and you're kind of real champions for them. And I can understand the attraction from them, you know, wanting to be a part of that, because but firstly, your vision has got to be very, very compelling. But do you think there was hesitance or reticence from them, as you know, founders of very strong businesses with many different paths and options and routes to success potentially, is, you know, with greatest respect, coming to work for you, you might stifle their, you know, control, right? Because you share your opinion, you have a clear kind of point of view. How have you managed to balance that so you're not getting in the way of their
Well, the answer is, you know, you use the word for, and it's not for, it's with. So, you know, we have a structure. I do have a control vote in the structure of the company, but that's because I really think unification of ownership and control is critically important.
Yeah.
Everybody has a big shareholding in the company. I mean, we operate in a fairly forthright way. It's as I said, the top 8 people meet every day. It's a fairly robust, what some people would term robust conversation. If people disagree, they disagree. No, I think, you know, it may be, I mean, to your question, Tom, I think it might be different in 5 years' time when, you know, hopefully we'll be considerably bigger and considerably more successful. You know, we crossed the unicorn status, what was it, about 6 months ago, 9 months ago. We've now crossed, or in the process of crossing from a dollar point of view, double unicorn, if you like. When we get to whatever it is in the future, it might become more difficult, more complex and more structured, and it may lose, you know, we haven't had time to develop bad habits.
Yeah.
And it may be, you know, when McKinsey says the average life of a company is 17 years in the S&P 500 or the FTSE 100, what they're saying is that there's a process where you become analog.
Yeah.
You morph from digital 1.0 to digital, and you don't get to digital 2.0. You go into an analog sort of condition. And maybe that's a natural life cycle. You know, that explains why our market cap is up 175% over the last couple of years, and the holding companies have fallen by 50%. I mean, that's the fact. And it may be surely, you know, reason, going back to the Matthew Walker graph, it may be that those executives, and it must have been from the holding companies that they asked, those executives of the holding companies look at S4 and say it's bound to grow faster because it's smaller.
Yeah.
We're huge and we can't get out of our way. And
Yeah.
you know, and therefore it's too complex. Coming back to your simplicity thing, our company is simple because it's smaller, and it may be just a function of size. I think digital doesn't demand brawn, it demands brain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, you know, even in the media area, the qualities of Group M are different to the qualities of Mighty Hive. And it shows, because when Mighty Hive competes against the holding companies, it invariably wins. When media markets compete against the holding companies, they invariably win. I mean, you can see it in the growth rates.
Yeah. Let's just let's just touch on that a second. Maybe we can get Scott in, Tom.
Sure. Yeah, drop me out for a minute.
Okay, we've had enough of Denford. Thank you. Very good. Welcome, Scott. I wanted to talk a little bit about the Whoppers that Sir Martin was referencing earlier on, and the pitches that you are involved in. Are you finding yourselves being invited to more larger reviews, or are they still discipline-specific digital reviews? How are you finding the market changing?
Sure. I mean, 100% of what we do is digital, so we certainly focus on digital. By the way, if you've got any pitches that you wanted to invite us to, we're more than happy to participate.
We'll bear that in mind.
Yeah, exactly. We can have a chat afterwards. So I think what we've seen, certainly in the past, I would say past 9 months or so, is that we are being invited to more things, and we are being invited to some of the larger general pitches on the understanding that they know we can't do all of it. So we sort of tick the boxes on
so where they fragment scope, they are bringing that as a potential solution to you guys.
Exactly. We've been invited into a couple of pitches where it was very clear they wanted everything, and we said, well, we don't do that. And they said, well, just come back and pitch what the bits you do. We're pretty careful about pitches, though, and I have to be nice to you because you're pitch consultants, but we're pretty skeptical about the process in general, and we're very careful about which ones we go for. So we are involved in 2 pretty major ones right now, which, as Martin said, would become Whoppers and very significant clients for us. And those are, big formal pitches. But I think
makes you, how do you become discerning? What is it? What is the selection process by which you accept an invitation to tender?
Sure. So the first thing I think is looking at it, at the actual client itself, so the person we're going to be working with. And I think in our experience, that a lot of pitches are done for sort of statutory review purposes, or they want to go out and see what's in the market, but they're not really looking for fundamental change. Clients just want, maybe to smash the costs down a little bit, or to see what else is out there. And that's we're probably not going to win those, so it's really not a good use of our time. What we like to do is enter pitches where there's a very clear change agent being brought into a client who has a remit to really shake things up and do things differently. Because
as in a stakeholder, or as in a changed, evolved, perhaps perspective around or vision around media and communications. It's a particular stakeholder you're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, ideally the top stakeholder, but certainly someone who's been brought in at a C-level, ideally, to do things differently. And I think in those cases, when we come in, we are very different. We have a disruptive approach to things, and we have a different model. So we look very attractive versus, the old model that everyone else is rolling out. So I think, we're backing ourselves to win from day one in those situations. In terms of, we have a very defined skill set and practice offering that we have. So it's all around data and programmatic and digital content. So obviously, those need to be high up the agenda. And I think we're also, we enjoy working with clients who have a very open mind in terms of the structure and of that relationship. So, a lot of our bigger clients and deeper relationships are more sort of hybrid models or embedded models or even in-house models, technically, rather than the traditional outsourced agency model. So, when some of those boxes are ticked and part of the process, and we feel comfortable that we have a good chance, then we go for it. Otherwise, I mean, we have a much more, I guess, what we call land and expand strategy to new business, where we're just getting deeper and deeper into existing clients and growing them at very strong organic rates.
Yeah. And Martin, anything to add to that?
Well, yeah. Let me push you. Look, most companies are in tough times. Q2, which companies will be reporting in a few weeks or a few days, is going to be a bloodbath. Q3 will get better, Q4 will get relatively better, and 2021, I think, will improve, maybe faster than people anticipate. Certainly the stock markets are saying that. But if you're in deep doo-doo, why would you spend 4 or 5 months going through a long, complicated pitch process when the need is to get on with it quickly? And this gets into very controversial territory, but let me say it. A lot of this area is occupied by what I would call pay-to-play models, where there are clear conflicts of interest. And it becomes highly political and highly complex. I've spoken to the CEO of a major company just recently, this week in Europe. I spoke to the ex-CEO of a major media company. Both of them told me that their pitch, which in both cases took 3, 4, 5 months, saved them a lot of money. They become procurement exercises, and that's nothing wrong in that. They have an obligation to deliver what they do at the best margins and the lowest possible cost. There's nothing wrong in that, but it's not a business that we really want to be in. We want to be in a business where we add value, we add revenue. So one company, again, won't say which, decided to go into a review, which is going to take 4 or 5 months. They just reported very poor results. And they're going into this review at a time when we've been doing some work for them, and we've proven that we can drive their top line growth by more. The work that we've done has driven their growth. We regard it as being their shining star. And their top line growth has been 100 basis points bigger than it would have been using other approaches. So we have demonstrable, it's going back to what Scott said about land and expand. It's far better. And every CMO should know who they think the best people are to work with. Whatever ID Comms can tell them, they should have some understanding of what's in the market.
Absolutely.
It's just like our people, everybody should be a chief talent officer. You know, sort of siloing into a vertical function inside the company, HR or talent, in a professional service firm is crazy. We should all know who the best people are.
That's right.
And we may need specialists to help us locate them and find them or whatever, but we should know.
But I'll tell you,
it's motherhood and apple pie to me. And I just think the process that we've got into of pitching is commoditized, and it's past its sell-by date. I think really what we have to do is to get there faster and better, cheap is a bad word, more efficiently.
Completely agree.
Quality value.
Completely agree. Well, that's good. That's good. We didn't see that one coming, but it's a very good. That's a really good challenge. Let's just unpack that very quickly, because there is conflict of interest in that market, in that intermediary market, which I might add, just take the opportunity just to remind you guys, which I know you know already, but to anyone that's watching, that as a firm, our commercial relationships are purely with the advertiser entirely. We have no commercial relationship with anyone else in the supply chain.
Yeah.
And there are some that do have that, and that causes some complexity and some additional tension. Perhaps you missed last week's episode, Martin, because we had 2 important procurement leaders on talking about the shift of narrative from cost to value, which I know is something we've all been talking about for the last decade. WFA have just published an excellent report about the future role of procurement as a partner in growth and all of this. Our view is we can see it edging slowly that way. Now, that's not to say, and we can see them in the marketplace. We know who they are, right? There are pitches out there at the moment. They're clearly being driven by cost for companies that need it. So that hasn't gone away. On our side, we're very discerning, actually, and some of those, even the things that are in the market right now, are things that we turned down because we knew that was the brief. We have to know 2 things. One is that there's a strategic ambition in that pitch, and secondly, that we have access to stakeholders inside beyond just cost. That's the other thing. So, we're all doing our bit to make the pitch better. Can it be faster, better, cheaper? Yes, absolutely. And if anything, current conditions have necessitated that be the case, which is good. And I know conditions play well to you at the moment in your business, and the conditions are playing well to us as well in our business to innovate that as well.
But just come back, Tom. The best way to really evaluate a network, an agency, or whatever it happens to be, is to work with them.
Yeah.
And that's why I think what Scott said about land and expand and what we believe about land and expand is far better. I mean, we win a project, we do a good job, we get another project. It's the process of organic growth. And also the pressures, if you're the incumbent, which the odds are that we will not be the incumbent. But if you're the incumbent, what do you have to do? You have to run the existing account, make sure the trains run on time, and you have to pitch the business as well. It's a very, very difficult job for the incumbent. Hugely difficult.
That'll come, surely, at one point. That's going to be some of the growing pains. I hope you get there.
You get some more whoppers.
I hope you get there. So we're going to start to wrap up in a second. Scott, thank you for joining us. It's the middle of the night there, so you.
That's right.
For dialing in.
It's the usual. It's 24/7. For God's sake, 24/7.
That's why we're faster, better, cheaper. We don't.
Are you faster, better, or cheaper? I don't know. Okay. Thanks, mate. Good night.
Good night. Thank you.
So, Martin, just to wrap up, the final question was, we refer back to the stuff that Matthew was writing. This is Matthew Walker at Credit Suisse. Quite an epic report. It's like a 100-page report. The bits we're referring to is literally like a half a page. It's in the middle, but there's lots of references to your company. But it's a good snapshot of the industry right now and what's going on. So, if, as Credit Suisse research suggests, you are the answer, perhaps in some cases, what is the question what's the CMO question that you're answering?
Well, who is the best partner? In our case, in the digital ecosystem, which in media is half the industry. Even the blessed Financial Times woke up to the fact that digital is now more than half of the industry, and according to our calculations, by 2022 will be 57.5%. And Michael Nathanson, another very good analyst, forecasts something like 2/3 by 2024. So, who is the best partner to work with them in the digital ecosystem with those, with the 6 platforms plus the 3 software companies, Adobe, Oracle's, Salesforce, plus Apple and Microsoft and IBM and SAP and Twitter and Snap and Pinterest and Spotify and Netflix and Samsung and LG. Who's the best partner, junior partner, to work with, right? In the digital, we're not in the traditional, neither do we want to be in the traditional, in that thing. And the second thing is, who's the best partner to help us take back control? Because I think marketeers after 2008 lost control. ZBB, they reduced their costs. The walls in the Walls Gardens started to go up in 2016 to a degree that we didn't think possible. They lost control. They are now taking back control. I come back to Mark Pritchard, where you started, and we can, towards the end, finish. He is taking back control of a process that I think they're not. So just like the British voter wants to take back control, or has taken back control from Brussels, the CMO has to take back control of marketing and do a couple of other things. Work with and integrate sales and IT. So there are 3 functions here: sales, marketing, and IT, which have all come together. So it's first, who's your best digital partner, or should be. Secondly, how can we take back control? In-housing. Harvard Business School have just issued a case study on us, on Mighty Hive and Sprint. And that's about in-housing. Agencies didn't recommend in-housing because they lost the client. It's not that we don't care. Obviously, we want to work on the business. But if we think, along with the client, that in-housing the best solution, as opposed to embedding where it's our people embedded, or outsourcing, we will say so. And we're not frightened to do that. we are very independent and agnostic. We have no axe to bear. Our fee systems are open books. We don't have any hidden discounts. We don't have any, backhanders. It's all open. And it's clear. This is a really important point, because the ANA, I had Bob Leodis on, we have our own little channel like yours, it's called S4 Live, and I had Bob Leodis on it, and, there's history there. I'm on the other side of the fence now, if you like. But, he was on a mission to put the agency holding companies on the spot, to the extent, calling in the DOJ and the FBI and everybody. And so it's very serious stuff. And whether it was right or wrong is irrelevant. The perception was created that the agency industry was hiding something. And so I think dispelling that myth, if it was a myth, or dispelling that perception is critically important. So having an open, transparent model that is faster, better, faster agility, better meaning understanding those companies that I listed, last but not least, being more efficient, I think is critically important. So I think those are some of the questions that we answer.
Good.
Very good. Thank you.
Very good. It's interesting. We probably the third person we've talked about more than anyone else on the show over the years is probably Bob and his team there, and we've been very close to the reporting and obviously all of that discussion around from the ANA and the other trade bodies that have done such a good job, and ISBAR recently with additional focus on that area. And there's more to come. There's more discussion required. Do you feel that you are caught under that shadow of accusation and investigation as S4 Capital, or are you ready?
S4 doesn't have that at all. And S4, has leveraged that, if you like, to be honest. We've said, we're an open book. Our direct costs are lower. We have a younger workforce with much more flexible compensation. We're not going to import agency inflation. We have every day inbound CVs, and we're horrified. What happens, what's happening in the traditional groups, the traditional creative part of the company, revenues are falling. Does the creative director or the account handler or the strategic planner take less compensation? Sure, they don't. And on the other side, on the digital side, where it's expanding, the people are paid less. And do you think that their compensation is expanding at the same level of the growth? No. So there's a disconnect there. It's a real problem. So our directs are lower, our indirects are non-existent. The holding companies, despite the fact, when they want to go to one firm, what do? They build all this overhead at the center, what I call the CBOs, the chief breakfast officers. All right? They build all that at the center, and they duplicate what's going on in the verticals. So agency A has its new business, its IT, its procurement. Agency B has it, agency C. So when it comes to load up the fees with overhead, the overhead uplifts are huge. They can't compete. Not only does it sort of restrict them, it's like a straitjacket in terms of decision making. And one CEO of a holding company said at a institutional investor presentation, it takes a long time to pull the levers in the company.
Yeah,
it's slow to pull it. Well, they're going to be firing 50,000 people whilst we continue to hire. God bless them. Let them carry on doing that. Let them carry on.
Good. Listen, thank you for sharing this bit of that story. Are they keeping you young, or are you helping them grow up? What's the kind of dynamic? All of your new team around you, you said you've got this kind of like young, vibrant team. You're bringing all these kind of.
They're not children. They're 40-year-olds, and I'm 75-year-old. So I will be dead and buried when they are very successful, as being successful now. So, no, listen, I just think, look, somebody asked me, why do I do what I do? And one reason is it's my mother's genes. That's 1/3 of it. 1/3 of it is I didn't want to play golf. Fills me, or do portfolio stuff. And the third thing is, to be blunt with you, there is a bit of edge in relation to what happened 2 years ago. I think the board. Now, I chose. I mean, people don't accept this, but I chose to resign. I mean, they couldn't get rid of me contractually. I chose to resign. I went, and I think they're paying a price for it. The market cap of we said we weren't going to talk about WPP.
Yeah, we weren't going to talk about it.
Has fallen from 16 to 7 billion. Now, I'm still the biggest shareholder, individual shareholder, so it pains me. And I think they're making a pig's breakfast of it, to be very, very blunt. A real pig's breakfast of it.
Well, thanks for talking about
the only solution, and it would be good for your business, the only solution is to break WPP up. You create, Ogilvy buys itself out, AKQA buys itself out. Then you would have radical change. See, I mean, this is really important, I think. 1985, when we started WPP, that market share model made sense. Having competing agencies made sense. It's gone. What unified, unitary is critically important. And it's not WPP, it's Publicis, Omnicom maybe to a lesser degree.
That aggregation of billings, particularly the media side, is especially important.
It's gone. It's gone. It's not as important. Not as important. So new model, new times, new model.
On that note,
listen, we wish you all the best of luck. Lovely to catch up with you and Scott. I can still see Scott's back in our green room. I thought he'd gone to bed. He's incredibly dedicated. I've got nothing better to do. So thank you to both of you.
Thank you.
Really appreciate the insight into what's going on there and where you're heading for the future. I'm sure we'll be crossing paths shortly on various pitches and things like that.
Thank you. Put us on all your lists.
We'll do. Okay, that's an instruction.
Thank you, Martin. Bye-bye.
Thanks, have a good day.
Thank you. God bless you. Have a nice weekend. Bye-bye.
Okay.
There you go.
Very interesting. Thank you. Thank you to Martin. Thank you to Scott. That is your special interview media snack for this week. Thank you very much for watching. Subscribe to be updated for these kind of things. They're fun. Every Friday, 11 a.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. UK time. But that's it for this week. Bye for now.
See you next time.